Welcome back, everyone. We're at the International Cannabis Business Conference in San Francisco, California, and joining us here at the Russ Belville Show desk, we have Dr. Amanda Reiman from the Drug Policy Alliance. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Russ. How are you?
Great. And you were just on a panel with Dale Sky Jones, Stanton Peele, and
Jim Gonzalez was the moderator.
I was going to say Joe, but Jim Gonzalez. There we go. Got it right. And tell us a little bit about what you were presenting here at the conference.
Well, our panel was specifically about advocacy. And, I think it's important as we move forward with this new industry that is very exciting with a lot of opportunities that we don't ignore the immense harms that marijuana prohibition has caused vulnerable communities over the last 40 years. And so what I was trying to tell the audience is that, it's great to say I'm going to go into this community and I'm going to bring 50 new jobs with me. But what about the people who can't get jobs because they have drug convictions? Mm-hmm. What about them? It's great to say I'm an organic farmer who's going to be growing sustainably on this land, but what about all the land that's been devastated by trespass grows? So as a burgeoning industry, we have a responsibility not only to be socially responsible moving forward, but to be socially responsible in how we treat the past.
It's a strange industry in that it started off with medical marijuana and now recreational adult use of cannabis is becoming legal. And in almost all of these laws, there's some codicil in it that says if you've had a grow felony in the past or you've been busted in the past dealing, you can't get involved. It's got to be the only industry that says, hey, you experts, you're not allowed.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is that the people that are most likely to have gotten those arrests and those charges for cultivation are the people that were trying to be transparent. I mean, right. The more transparent you try to be, meaning that you're growing in an appropriate place, that you're not diverting water. I mean, all the things we would want from a good, responsible farmer also puts you most at risk. Yeah. So we've created a system where the people that are willing to come out and be seen, they're kind of the ones putting their heads on the chopping block. And it would be really unfortunate if we created an industry that completely barred the folks that took the most risk over the years.
Yeah, now in moving forward and creating that industry, the next big move, of course, is the state of California, 2016 coming up, and everybody's pointing at this. And Dale made a few mentions to this as well in her presentation about getting everyone together on the same page in California and understanding how many different stakeholders are involved here. Can you give us a look forward to what's happening now to get people together and what you see moving forward in 2016?
Well, I think that Ethan made a really good point this morning, which is when we talk about California and marijuana legalization, we're not just talking about people who care about marijuana. We're talking about people who care about the environment. We're talking about people who care about equity and jobs and a job availability. So it's definitely important that, yes, we hear from the marijuana base. We need to know what they want, and CCPR has been doing an amazing job, the California Cannabis Policy Reform. If you watch Monty Python, it's the People's Front of Judea, is how I keep saying. Splitters! Exactly. So they've been doing an amazing job having stakeholder meetings and really listening to the people that have a vested interest because they know a lot about marijuana, they care about marijuana. Where Drug Policy Alliance sees itself is really reaching outside of that box, doing a lot of work with social justice organizations, with religious organizations, with labor organizations, and I myself have been doing a lot of work with environmental organizations, hearing what their stake is in this fight and how do we address their concerns, because what we need to do is we need to convince the public that what they're voting for is better than what they have now. And to be honest, we've had medical marijuana in California for 20 years. Some may say we've had a pilot legalization program in California for 20 years. And for a good majority of Californians, it's working pretty well. So I think it's important that we show people what regulation can get them. It's going to get more patients access. It's going to help with the environmental degradation that's been happening. And most importantly, it's going to stop people from getting in trouble for marijuana possession. Because even though possession of less than an ounce is an infraction in California, it's black and brown folks that are getting the majority of those infractions, and it's still a ticket. And if you can't pay the fine and you're on probation, you can have your probation revoked. I mean, what we've seen time and time again is that whether it's a slap on the wrist or the death penalty, no matter where the punishment lies in severity, it will always be heaped on poor people of color.
Absolutely.
So the only way you get around that, eliminate eliminate the punishment.
There we go. We're speaking with Amanda Reiman from Drug Policy Alliance, working hard in California to get legalization to happen. And, we mentioned that decriminalization from 2010 when the governor tried to take the wind out of the sails of Prop 19. And I think Ethan made an allusion to the fact of here's one we lost where we actually won, because we started the conversation and we did end up with decriminalization. Now in 2014 and moving forward, we've got President Obama, Eric Holder, the Cole memo. We have so much now that is allowing state legalization to go forward. And Congressman Rohrabacher was here as well, the author of that amendment that forbade the Department of Justice from spending money to go after state legal medical marijuana, or I assume, well, it's just medical marijuana the way it's written. And then yet we have Melinda Haag. And we have Patrick Ormsby, and we have the prosecution of the Kettles Falls Five, Berkeley Patients Group, Harborside. How are they getting away with spending this money?
Well, I think what it's really about, I mean, in specifically the case in Northern California with the attacks on Harborside and Berkeley Patients Group, is it's an attempt to take down the most well-regulated, most respectable organizations, because those are the ones that pro-legalization folks point to say regulation works. If you remove all of the good actors and all you're left with are the bad actors, it's really easy to point to a system and say, well, it's completely out of control. Look at the people that are running it. It's like, well, you took away everybody that was trying to do it right. And so I think we're seeing a similar kind of action. Now, in terms of Melinda Haag, man, I wish I could have a little insight into that woman's head, but she lives in Berkeley. And my only thought is that this is some kind of personal vendetta, because the city has been so proactive when it comes to their cannabis regulations. They recently became the first city to require dispensaries to set aside free cannabis for people who are low income. And I don't think she likes that. Yeah. And I think she's looking at this as an opportunity, but she's going to lose. Right. And eventually when we look back in history at this, I mean, she's going to be looked at as a villain. I mean, it's not going to change. Right. She's looked at that way now.
How is this happening with Berkeley? Melinda Haag, is it? That's how it's pronounced. And that's where Kevin Sabet did his undergrad work.
I know.
What's up with this?
So this is kind of interesting because, I teach at Berkeley, and he was there at around the same time as one of my good friends who was with Students for Sensible Drug Policy. And he tried to start the first anti-drug group at Berkeley. And so they would have these sign wars where, he would put up an anti-drug meeting sign and she'd tear it down, and she would put up an SSDP sign and he would tear it down. I mean, all I can say is that he's the modern day Harry Anslinger. And he really gets off on being the one fish in the crowd to swim the other way, whether that's being the one anti-drug, conservative at Berkeley, or whether that's being the one person under the age of 35 who thinks marijuana should be illegal. I think he gets off on that. And unfortunately, it would be funny and we laugh about him and, he's kind of funny. But the fact is that thousands and tens and thousands of people are going to jail every year for marijuana and having their lives ruined because he has some kind of moral stance. And that's wrong. I mean, that's egregious. I mean, I think, again, when we look back at history, I mean, he will be looked at as a Harry Anslinger. I mean, somebody who is responsible for the ruining of tens of thousands of lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a wonderful conference we're having here. We need to get back to it. Before we go, any last words for the audience as far as how to contact you, get in touch with DPA, or help this California movement in some way?
Sure, absolutely. Well, Drug Policy Alliance, our website is drugpolicy.org. Very easy to remember. We have an unbelievable amount of great information on that website, not just about how to become involved, but fact sheets on different drugs so that you can impress your friends with your knowledge. I'm on there as well, but if you want to get in contact with me, my email is AREIMAN@drugpolicy.org. I'm happy to answer any questions. And I'll also say that we have a column on the Drug Policy website that comes out every 2 weeks called Ask the Doctors About Marijuana. That's written by myself and Dr. Malik Burnett from our DC office. And you can submit questions. So if you have a question about marijuana, you can go and follow the link on the website and submit a question, and we'll answer it. I have to say, since we've been doing this column, about 90% of our questions, how to pass a drug test.
Yeah, here's how you pass a drug test. Don't take one, or don't take drugs.
That's probably the only way to not get pregnant is to not have sex.
You can pass up the test, or you can pass the test. You cannot cheat the test. Although I know a lot of people that manage to get around it, and that's drug testing is what brought me here. I was drug tested out of an information technology career. I didn't wear these ties just for fun. this is something, as we move forward with legalization, that's kind of critical to me, is I think we're entering what I would call the Jim Crow period of marijuana. It's like, yeah, it's legal, but you're still second-class citizens. You still can get fired from your jobs, lose your child custody. Any thoughts on moving forward with equalization?
I think that's going to take time. I think the proof is in the pudding. I mean, unfortunately, we are guilty until proven innocent, that we can actually be responsible individuals when it comes to our employment, our parenting, and our driving, and using cannabis. So I think what it's really going to take is for enough time to go by where people actually can observe people who use cannabis on a regular basis and see that it doesn't turn you into all these things they've been told. And then they'll start asking the question, well, how come they can get fired from work and how come they can lose their children? Something very similar with the LGBT movement. It took some time, and then eventually people were saying, well, my neighbor's gay, but they're awesome, so why can't they get married? And I think...
Or Frank, the gay guy at work, hey, he does a great job. What's the problem?
Exactly. So I think we will start to see that. The more normalized it gets, the less the stigma is there, the more people will be open about their consumption.
Fantastic. Amanda Reiman, Drug Policy Alliance. We're here at the International Cannabis Business Conference. Thanks for joining us here at the desk. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.